Mexico City concentrates 22 million people into a single, highly dense geographical footprint. Sustaining a population of this density requires continuous intervention. The city must artificially extract resources at a massive scale to override the basin's natural environmental limits. This extraction relies entirely on macroscopic infrastructure. Heavy, centralized pumping networks push millions of gallons of water through industrial steel pipes every hour. On April 14, 2015, the Kesh Foundation presented an alternative framework to this centralized grid during their Spanish-language hydrology workshop. The core of their proposal rests on a state of matter they classify as GANS, or gas in a nanostate. Their framework argues that relying on massive municipal engineering is mathematically unsustainable. Instead, they propose that true equilibrium requires decentralizing water generation down to the atomic level, distributing production directly into individual households. To understand this Stalinger, we map the Lake Texcoco Basin's natural inward flow. Rainfall brings 215 cubic meters per second, but urban evaporation burns off 159. With consumption demanding another 75, the resulting deficit forces the city to import 20 from neighboring watersheds. Even that is insufficient, into a drying subsurface, visibly degrading the regional landscape. Centralized grids operate by battling the region's natural evaporation rates while relying heavily on finite, non-renewable localized extraction. The math guarantees a collapse. The typical global response to resource scarcity is to build larger, macroscopic capture systems. This includes traditional renewable energy infrastructure, like massive solar arrays and wind farms that consume vast tracts of land. The Keshe Foundation categorizes these as false solutions. Rather than solving systemic imbalances, they simply shift the energetic and environmental footprint from one extraction method to another. Economically, these sweeping infrastructural projects rely on heavy state subsidies. Those funds primarily enrich the private corporations manufacturing and installing the equipment, rather than benefiting the social economy. The same logic applies to municipal water grids. Forcing water through a complex, restrictive pipe network over vast distances creates immense friction, requiring enormous amounts of energy just to maintain pressure and velocity. They contrast this highly inefficient capture and transport model with localized atmospheric synthesis. Viewing water and energy as macro commodities requires a cycle of extraction and transport that makes environmental degradation a systemic requirement. Their proposed physical alternative is an open-source, desktop-scale device known as the CO2 kit. The mechanical premise is that GANS matter acts as a continuous, stable plasma energy source. They conceptually describe it as a miniature sun operating at room temperature. As the molecules interact in the diagram, inside the glowing field of the device, the system claims to detach an oxygen atom from captured carbon dioxide and bond it with hydrogen atoms pulled from ambient humidity, synthesizing a complete water molecule. The objective is not high volume per unit. The model relies on millions of these kits producing just 2 to 4 liters of water per week for individual families. When you multiply that micro-yield across a population of 22 million, the aggregate production theoretically eliminates the excessive pressure currently destroying the municipal aquifer. This atmospheric synthesis model was also tested for agricultural applications, using a strictly controlled nursery experiment with 5 identical plants. The first plant was configured with a GANS CO2 ring placed directly on the surface of the soil. The second utilized 3 distinct GANS bottles arranged in a geometric triangle around the base. For the third plant, the ring was completely buried beneath the soil line. The foundation claims that the plants in these energetic configurations survived by pulling ambient moisture directly from the environment, requiring no traditional active watering. The results of these 5-plant nursery tests serve as the basis for the foundation's broader claim that atmospheric moisture can be harnessed to sustain local growth, potentially allowing individual farms to function as independent water systems. The culmination of these GANS atmospheric experiments is a localized reactor known as the OASIS unit. This compact, suitcase-sized system is designed to scale the underlying plasma principles, theoretically generating both water and continuous electrical energy sufficient for an entire household. The Foundation's deployment strategy centers on sociology, specifically funding the distribution of these low-cost, open-source kits into primary and secondary schools. The psychological goal is early exposure. By having children build and operate the kits, they aim to reset the next generation's consciousness, breaking their ingrained dependency on centralized macro infrastructure. The long-term technological trajectory of the KESH framework points entirely toward total off-grid autonomy, allowing populations to survive independent of their specific planetary geography. Taken to its absolute endpoint, this localized energy and water synthesis model is intended to facilitate deep space travel and the eventual founding of cities on other planets. The OASIS unit functions as an architectural divorce protocol, a mechanism designed to decouple human survival from fixed planetary resource constraints. These theories and hardware models were heavily detailed during the Spanish-speaking workshops throughout early 2015, but the April 14th session marked a specific historical pivot, signaling a transition from theoretical presentations to physical institutional deployment. Exactly 1 week later, on April 21st, 2015, the KESH Foundation officially inaugurated its Spaceship Institute in the coastal city of Bari, Italy. This physical campus was established to formally train an international student body in the precise physics required to construct and execute these localized plasma systems. Whether analyzed as a fringe hypothesis or a radical scientific advancement, the Institute laid out a meticulously mapped, structurally complete alternative to the failing centralized models of modern civilization.